Hey guys, it's Afro Blue again. Welcome back to Afro Art. The mini hiatus is over. It's a Wednesday morning, it's peeing with rain, but let's look at exactly what's going on with the channel. So, as you know, I took a break on day 14 because between work, the baby, things like that, things were starting to get a little on top of me and I wasn't finding enough time for everything. I have since had a talk with the other half, moved some things around, and I now know how we're going to proceed. So, I'm looking at doing updates once a week now. Not going to be a specific day of the week, but what it will be is sort of everything I've done in that week being shown at once. So it's probably going to be a longer, more in-depth video each week, and we'll be looking at things once they've been completed for the most part, and talking about how it's been done, what techniques have been used, things like that. So that, again, there's still sort of the tutorial element to it, and you can still learn from it. Now, with regards to the actual recording, one problem I do have is that, naturally, the baby's in the house, there's going to be a lot of background noise. It's quite rare that I get a time when, you know, she's asleep and quiet. Especially over the past sort of week or so, because she's been a little unwell, bless her, but she's on the mend now, so that's the main thing. And in addition, I sort of applied for a few jobs that were more stable hours and better pay, so they sent me some exams I had to do in my own time, things like that. We've been actually kind of busy, but I can't guarantee it'll be a set day each week, but I do aim to get one up per week, and as I say, we're probably looking a good maybe 20 minutes, half an hour per video. Now, with regards to background noise, a baby crying, naturally, if I need to go see to her, if there's something I need to go do, you might find that there's some rather obvious jump cuts, but I'll try to make those as painless as possible and try and still make this look a little professional. So, the first thing I want to have a look at right here and now is the Warrior of Light, because naturally in that time I have been able to complete it, so we'll have a look at that first of all, and then we can take a look at something else that I want to discuss with you.
Here we are, the finished piece, and isn't it looking pretty damn awesome? So let's zoom in, let's have a look around, see exactly what we've done on this, shall we? First thing I want to bring attention to is just a small thing that a lot of artists need to start doing just to protect themselves with their work, and that's this here. This is a watermark. Because what you find a lot at conventions is that there are a group of people who will take fan art, things like that, drawn on DeviantArt, print them onto canvases, and then they'll try to sell those canvases at conventions. So if you're going to put anything online that's in finished quality, make sure it's watermarked. Now, let's have a look around the actual image as a whole, which, as you can see, is fully coloured and fully finished. And we'll have a look at some of the techniques that have been on display. So first of all, let's guess the light source. So I'll give you a second or two just so you can see where it might be. Then I will put the light source in, and we can see, in your opinion, whether I've actually kept to that light source or not. Alright, ready? Light source was supposed to be here. So, boom, boom, and boom. And don't worry, again, these lines are all on a separate layer, so there's nothing that I'm actually ruining with the actual drawing itself. So with that, if the light is coming from over here, then shadows would usually fall on this side of the actual figure themselves. What you also have to bear in mind with shadows are things like muscles, things like that. So what's going to be laying over what, where there's going to be natural dents and dips, so you can see sort of all in here that there would be muscle sort of in this bit. Okay, so that's all there, and naturally this dips in here just below the bicep, so that's got a fair bit of shadow on it as well. As for the actual shading itself, I actually opted to use one of the techniques that I quite rarely use, and that's to use one flat colour for all of the shading, and you know, let's just take a few bits off here so we can get straight down to just the darks themselves. So, there we go. Now that I've done that, you can see that all of those darker colours are actually just one shade of grey set on their own layer, and then there is a layer style just placed over the top of them, which then allows them to be dark. So if we just flick back a second, just zoom out so that you can see the full effect. Now there are a number of different layer styles you can potentially use to get the effect. Which one you do use depends largely on what you want to achieve with the image, what sort of contrast you'd like there to be, that kind of thing. The same applies for the light colours as well. So if you look at the lights, you can see it's all just one shade of white that makes the lights up there. And if we just go back to the layer style I had it on, there we go again. Now, a lot of people like to go nuts with gradients on colouring. Me, I'm not one of those people. So if we zoom in again and just have a look around, you'll see that for the most part it is all just flat one shade, flat two shades. So the only place where it's any different is on the shield and on the sword. Now you can see on the shield and sword quite clearly that there are gradients there. And the reason there are gradients is because I wanted it to look like the light was actually reflecting on metal, and I thought that was the best way to achieve it. I don't like when people use it on skin, things like that, because skin, I don't know, it just doesn't suit it when you have it on a gradient like that. So that's why I've made the decision that I have done there. One thing I would like to bring attention to as well, if we zoom in just into the face here, you can see the hair, how it's very much done in strands, so that the lines try to form other strands with the lights and shadows, so that you can see exactly how the hair would form and flow. So you've got that going on. With the gems, I tried to use light and shadow in the way that gems tend to reflect things. So there's a lot of sort of circular orbs, things like that within the colouring there. Here's a larger gem just so we can see that a little more clearly, and just got that there. So zoom out again, there's something else in this that I want to show you all, and this is a trick that I was in two minds whether to share it or not, but let's just take the layers themselves and pop them on normal, and then we want the same done just for the other ones as well. So if we put those on normals, let's just take the dark and light off so that we can actually see it. Okay, so underneath it, you can see that for certain areas of the armour, there's sort of this bubble effect going on. Now that's a texture that I've applied underneath to help give it the feel of being an armour. So you can see that applied in various places throughout the drawing there. Likewise with the metal on both the shield and the sword, there's then another texture which is just that kind of stainless steel finish. And the reason those are on there is just so that we can actually get it looking and feeling a lot more like the object themselves. So by the time you then layer up everything else, naturally it does become a lot more subtle. But the subtlety is what works about it, in my opinion. It should be one of those things where if you look closely, you can just about tell it's there, but it's not obvious and it's not interfering with anything. So that, for me, is the ideal. Now, I'm not going to pretend that this image is perfect. Of course it's not perfect, there are several things I could probably clean up. However, there is a point where you have to say, okay, that's as good as this image is going to get, I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm sure there are a lot of famous artists throughout time and history where on some of their masterpieces they feel that they could have done, you know, this and that and the other and kept going and going and going, but if they'd have done that, they would have never painted any of their other masterpieces, they'd have never done any other work, and you know, there does come a point where you just say, okay, that is to a finished quality and I'm going to move on now. The other thing I just quickly want to run by you is something that I put on just towards the end of my colouring, which gives it a little bit more of a natural feel and lets it look like some light is actually flowing over it. So this is a gradient that goes on top, and it's just simple, you know, from the light source down to your dark area, and popping that on just gives this really nice effect, and you can change the effect for the time of day or the environment that you want the character to be in. So, you know, you'd imagine this with a nice blue sky. If we get rid of that one, we can turn on a different one. So this one is a sort of pinky red one, and you can see if I just go back to, not that one, or that one, where's it gone? There we go. So if we go back to that, you can see that's got much more of a sunset feel to it, and I quite like putting these on just because it just gives a little more life to the drawing, and really makes it pop and just gives that final little lick to it, if you know what I mean. So with that, that's the finished piece. There's a version which isn't watermarked that I'll be sending to Randy herself so she can enjoy that any which way she wants. And yeah, that just about covers it.
So that's that completed. Randy is going to be very, very happy with that. She's already been extremely happy with the progress stuff that I'd sent her, and that is just going to be the icing on the cake. Of course, there will be the link to the artwork directly below. The other thing to discuss is that, obviously, that was for free, that was for a friend. I guess you could sort of count that as a Christmas present. Obviously, I have the capability to do this stuff, and I am willing to do them on commission basis. So if there's something that you want me to draw, then hit me a line either here on my DeviantArt or at an email address that I'm going to pop just right down there. Should be on the screen at the moment, and I will get back to you ASAP with pricing and sort of a rough time scale. The reason I'm not putting set prices out here and now is because there are a variety of things that could come up, and I need to base the pricing on how long it's going to take me to do, how difficult the character is, things like that. Things like Warrior of Light, he had a lot of small details, he took a lot longer than, say, Kirby would. You know, Kirby is a lot simpler to draw, so Kirby would cost far less than the Warrior of Light would cost. So the Warrior of Light is probably the upper end of the scale, and things like Kirby right the lower end of the scale. I'm trying to think what would be a good midpoint. I guess like a Mario would probably be a good midpoint. Master Chief would be one that would be the top end of the scale because that is some really intricate armor that he wears. Lower end of the scale, you know, Yoshi probably. Just to give you sort of a rough idea. Pricing, let me know if you're in the US or the UK or alternatively Canada, and then I can sort of provide prices based on your currency, so either GBP if you're in the UK, USD if you're in the US, or naturally Canadian dollars. If you're outside of those territories, then yeah, I'm sure I can work something out. The payments for commissions would be taken via PayPal. At the moment, really, I'll be honest, we could use some extra cash so that we can live a little more comfortably, because at the moment my salary allows us to just about get by, and it'd be nice if, you know, we could treat ourselves a little more than we currently can, and it'd be nice if I could actually, you know, earn some money from the art, and I think if I can start getting some commissions, things like that, prior to things like conventions, it's going to make me a lot more confident in my ability, and I'll be a lot happier actually, you know, doing it. So, yeah, if you have anything that you want me to draw on commission basis, by all means, please let me know and I'll get back to you with pricing. Until then, as I say, the videos will now be weekly. So thank you very much for your patience. I know it was a bit of a hiatus there, but we will charge on as normal from here. Thank you.